So, as we get started on this, this is, I guess, technically we call it episode 2. Episode 1 was a test run. It's like when you go to Six Flags, right? And everybody know. I don't even look. I'm not even gonna say the name of the ride, but when you go to Six Flags, we used to say for Worship on the Mountain, we'd be like, "Yeah, we want to get on a ride, but we can't ride the big one first, so we all gotta go to that warm up ride."
Yeah, that one to get you going.
What did anybody, what was that warm up ride though?
Wasn't it a Viper?
I thought it was Colossus.
No, man. See, y'all wild, man. I thought it was Gold Rush or so.
Gold Rush.
It was the simplest one, man. See, y'all was wild. I couldn't be doing all of that.
You said Gold Rush. I've been on Gold Rush since I was 9.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what. It turned into the warm up ride until it wasn't, because my knees was hitting the front, and I said, okay, I can't ride this no more. But
some of those turns were wild.
That's how it was a perfect warm up. So like for us, I think on obviously for going through this podcast and going through number 2, I think we kind of talked about it in what we wanted to go over. Obviously the podcast is about bridging the gap and talking about obviously ways that we've grown up in the congregation, grown up in the church, our experiences through life. And so I think that a topic that we can talk about today and tonight, it really is just about the evolution of worship. We've all gone through so many different, experiences through our time in the church. And so I don't know, to me, like the evolution of worship is a fun topic, because again, we've all come from different backgrounds and how we've grown up. And, over the last 25, 30 years, me being at LP, since David is considered the elder statesman of us, I've had to hear his thoughts on evolution and what it was going to be from probably age when he was 12 years old to where he is now. So, yeah. I mean, 100%. David, with that being said, man, tell me when you hear about, obviously the podcast is named Bridging the Gap, so we know what we're trying to do. But at the same time, when you hear the evolution of worship, what comes to your mind about the Church of Christ and the evolution of worship?
Yeah, so elder statesman, I'm not gonna let that slide. Like, I got you, Bryan. Yeah. Let's be very clear. 2 of us still have hair on our heads.
Oh, I know.
On this pod, and we do appreciate that.
I need to change my profile pic then.
Yeah. But I was thinking about it like, man, we all know, like you said, we all grew up in the church, in and around the church our entire lives practically. So we kind of know what worship looks like on a week in and week out basis, and just kind of with all that, as I like to say, all that fundamental church doctrine, worship, we will never change any of that, right? But just some of the different things, kind of like as it pertains to like the
tradition,
like the edges of it, right? Because at a certain point in time, I mean, as the church continues to grow, we all see, right, that it just kind of has a evolving spirit to it, right? Yeah. Now, the acts of worship are never going to change. I think we all would agree with that, right? The 5 acts of worship are never going to change as it pertains.
That's like standard.
Right, right. So we want to make that very clear to everybody, right? Like, not starting no church revolution on a
on a second podcast.
You know what I'm saying? We do want a 3rd episode, right? Yeah. So
we canceled that quick.
Yeah. But just kind of thinking about just the idea of evolving and things like that. It's like, we sometimes look at what is worship as it pertains to like our part and why we kind of come together. So the reason why we all come together, I think that's the fundamental grounding, understanding, and recognition of who God is and why we come together and worship, right? That won't ever change. That won't ever evolve, because like it is pretty straightforward. We worship God because He asked us to do it, and we do it because we love Him and we want to be obedient. Boom. But just as it pertains to kind of some of the things, right?
I would talk about, even if you hit that on that point in terms of, because we have platforms now where you could watch it technically, and versus kind of what it was, back in the day when they call it quote unquote tents, when it was like they put a tent up or there was just a building out there and everybody knew that's where you showed up and it would be packed house, like, like you said, all the time. And you'd be there all day. And so, from those times to where we are today, like, what do you think about that kind of evolution and why such a big change, you think?
Yeah. Because even like you said, like the 10 meetings and things like that, it all was about a vibe, man. Like they didn't call it that back in the day, but that's really what it was about. I mean, you
Could you imagine, Josh, if they said, "Oh, this is a vibe"?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, trying to catch
They were saying that back in '92. Yeah. But everybody that was there kind of felt a certain energy, right?
Yeah.
Over there, and I think that even when we kind of talk about it here and now, we still want that same energy. We still want that same, vibe when we come together and worship. But it obviously looks different than it did back in 1982, than it did in 1992, than it did in 2002, than it does in 2024, right? So, yeah, we're going to continue to evolve. Now, I will say this, for all of us that did grow up in and around the church, we understand worship the way that we do it at LP is not the way they do it at every single congregation, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Yeah, and that's okay. So,
what part of worship do you feel has evolved the most from, let's just call it in our lifetime? So let's call it in 30 years. What part of worship has evolved the most to what it is today when, a new Christian comes in and they see it and that's all they know because it's what they see in 2024. But from us, or from you, Josh, if you want to jump in on this too, but like, what do you think has been the biggest evolution in the Church of Christ in terms of worship over like 30 years?
That's a layered question. That's a good one though, but it's a layered question. I mean,
like, I thought y'all was frozen for a minute. I was like, I thought my internet was going bad. I was about to call Spectrum.
I was really
like stuck. Y'all was stuck. I was like, hold on.
Because I was trying to think more so for me is the difference. So you guys grew up in LP from, when you were born to growing up, but I was at Southside until I was 13. So for going from I'm trying to think from going from Southside's worship to LPs, what the differences were. I mean, it wasn't structurally different, but man, the sizes, I don't know. Southside at times felt very, very big, with the upstairs and the downstairs. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of echoes coming off the walls and things like that. So it was more of a stadium vibe. LP feels more like a family than that did. So that was the biggest change for me, is just, going from that crowd size to feeling very, everyone's here we're worshiping together as a family. That's what LP feels like. Yeah, whereas Southside was more like, man, you're coming for the show. Like you walk in, and if you're late, you're sitting up top upstairs. There's no seating
like everybody. Oh, like when everybody running and got the floor seats already. So you're like, oh, there are no more seats. I got to go to the back.
Dang, I got to go sit up in the nosebleeds real quick.
All right, no, that makes sense. I mean, what do you think, David? Like in 30 years, from your point of view, obviously you've grown up at LP, but you've also been at many congregations, so kind of like worship styles, as you mentioned earlier, can be different. But like, what's that again? What's that part of worship that you see that's like been a crazy evolution in your mind? What's been like the largest evolution of worship that you've seen?
I'm gonna give you the safe one first, and then I'm gonna really step out on a limb second. All right, the safe one is this, right? Like, remember how it was pre-pandemic? We're talking like 5-10 years ago, where we kind of wore it as a badge of honor when we would be at church like practically all day, right? You'd have morning worship, right?
Oh yeah.
And then you would, maybe go grab something to eat for lunch or whatever, and then come back for a second worship.
Yes.
Talking about, this is back when we had Bible classes rocking in the morning, right? So we get there at 9:00, upstairs Bible classes going on, worship service 10:15, out of there till 12:15, come back to the building at 6:00, be there from 6:00 till like 7:30. Like, we used to wear that as a badge of honor back in the day. Yeah. Now, if we think about it, we have evening service once a month.
Yeah.
and it's 5 to 6. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah, man, it be so early. Like it's still light outside.
Right.
It's still light outside.
Yeah.
And so, it's just one of those things that's one of the evolutions of the church over the last, like we said, maybe 5 years or so, where, people still want to kind of get in and, feel like they have worship, but it's a lot more like efficient with our worship as it pertains to timeliness of it all,
No, I think,
yeah.
I think like for sure on that one, I can definitely understand. I mean, I remember those days, like you said, we Bible study start at 9, and then after Bible study, you hear ding, doom, doom, and then it's time to go down the stairs, and then it's 10. You go to the brothers, go to the back, everybody saying hello. It's 10:15. Church start at 10:15 back then, not even 10:20, at least at LP how it is now, because whatever, and then you go through church, and I can see that, man. It would be like 12:15, 12:30, and then all of a sudden you'd be like on special family days. Next thing you know, you look outside, the tents are out, the tables are out, and then you're like, you eat, and it's 2:33. Then after you eat, then you had, then you were like, you know what? It's already 4:30. We might as well just keep talking or come back into the building. And then next thing you know, it's 5:30. Time for evening worship at 6.
Yep.
It was like the longest days. I remember as a little kid, sometimes, now that I think about it, I wear my suit for like a couple hours, and I'm like, man, let me hurry up and get this tie off. But back then, I'm like, man, we had no wonder our shoes was wearing out, because we was walking the grounds all day
long.
And in them shirts and ties for 8 hours.
Yep.
Dale, when's the last time you was in a shirt and tie for 8 to 9 hours?
My wedding 10 years ago.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Like it is wild to see like kind of like that type of evolution in terms of the worship style. Obviously, you kind of have to get with the times a little bit in terms of trying to, I think, to me, and David, you correct me if I'm wrong on this, and what do you guys think? I think that obviously the theory behind it was supposed to be, from not just LP, but a lot of congregations, is that you're trying to find ways to meet the masses. Kind of similar to, I guess, not necessarily exactly like that, but the way, obviously, if we think about like Jesus and obviously his whole life and what he did, it wasn't like people always came to him. Obviously, once they heard where he was at, people were running, but for the most part, he was always meeting people where they were at to obviously do the best job that he can. So I guess the way that the evolution of worship has gone, theoretically, is I guess most congregations are trying to meet people where they're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that supposed to be the gist of it?
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you think, Josh?
I agree. That makes perfect sense, because I mean, where we're at today with technology and everyone with Zoom and how fast life goes now, it's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to give people, not necessarily in the building, but in the service as much as possible. So I agree. That makes it very accessible.
I think one thing that hasn't really changed, though, if we talk about evolution of worship, and again, I think most Christians and most Church of Christ would just understand this, is that the funniest thing to me is that when you would go to any other congregation and that sacred selection would be right there in the back pew. And I'm like, hold on. As a little kid, that made me happy, because I was like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm in the right place.
I was like, I'm in the right place. You look around, the building looks different, and then you sit down, and then you look at the back pew, and then there was somebody who braided the hair or braided the little bookmark sacred selections.
Yep.
I was like, okay, they singing out of sacred selections. My precious Savior. Okay, he bore it all. Got it. Like, I'm good. I know this one. And it's funny. And I remember, I guess if we do talk about evolution a little bit, when it went to the new book, I don't even know what the name is. It's called Songs of Praise or Songs of Praise or something.
Yeah.
When they changed
or something like that,
everybody's face kind of tuned up, because they was like, what is this? And then once they found out some of the songs from the old sacred selections was in there, it kind of like had everybody there. But I laugh at, like, again, it's hard. Like, change is hard, I think, for a lot of people. That's just kind of like what it is, whether it's like church or in life, change can be hard. And so I think, like, when you talk about evolution, you kind of have to have an open mind to it. But David, I think you put a stamp to it in the beginning, where you still always got to have your 5 acts of worship. I mean, there's no matter what. I mean, I think those things obviously have stayed the same. If there's one thing though, David, I want you to touch on, because I thought that was going to be the first thing you said. Please talk about responses and the evolution of responses. Tell me, like, give the story in the backdrop of how you felt when you were younger, and then why you pushed so hard, and the Lord bless you now to become a deacon. But it seems like it all happened around the same time. So tell us exactly like that whole evolution from responses where it was.
I'm gonna be very real. First of all, I find it funny that you're putting me on the spot. Y'all go to the same church I go to. Okay. Y'all felt the same anxiety I felt when you saw certain people get up there. All right. And you know exactly what I'm talking. We ain't gotta mention no names.
My good brother Ellie.
Right.
Wait, what did you say, Josh?
My good brother L.
Oh, don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you know what I mean? Like, it just goes to show you, right, that we can still worship, and it might not look the exact same, but it's okay, because we still do the same. We still do the same thing, same characteristics in worship, Sunday in and Sunday out. Bible tells us to pray one for another. We still pray one for another every single Sunday.
True.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't give everybody a microphone to get up there and tell us.
So, but all right, Josh, if all right, since obviously now we have moved forward from that, but if you were this age 20 years ago and we were doing that, tell me, how would you handle somebody going up to when the preacher stands up and it says, obviously if you got something on your heart, come up here and say it. And not even that, I'm thinking of the people who, even the ones who didn't want to go down front. And then I felt bad, because then everybody sits down, and then there'd be like 4 people standing up, and then you're like, oh no. But Josh, how do you handle the person who takes 5 minutes of time, the Sister Odins, the whoever's stay like doing that? Like, tell me, how would you handle that if you were the person with the mic? How would you handle that?
So I'm not gonna lie, I've had like many a night. So as a kid, even to now, I'm very much a perfectionist. So like, if I have a job to do, even with worship service, with work, anything like that, I'm going to prepare before I get there, which is why I'm happy that we're getting the worship assignments on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah.
Because now if I have certain things, I know I'm going to get prepared all week.
Yes.
So one of my biggest anxieties growing up in church was like, man, if I get old enough, how am I going to do responses? Because what does it look like taking that mic away? Like, how do you know how to get the mic away, how to pull it away? So, man, dude, that's one of the things I have a lot of anxiety about.
I mean, well, see, Dale, obviously you now, obviously we're all in the new age where everybody's from a card. But you were one of the ones, because you were a little bit older, that got a couple chances up there. So how did you know how many pats on the back, or how or when you knew it was on when you had the mic, and then their hand went like this, and when their hand touched the mic, and then you knew you couldn't take it away. So like, what was the training? What was the training behind that?
The training was always, right, don't be a distraction in worship. That was always the truth.
How can you not be a distraction?
And for the life of me, I thought that the whole thing, it could go real left real fast.
Quick.
You know what I'm saying? So every time someone got up there, I was like, I've preached before on Sunday morning, led songs on Sunday morning, read scripture, did all that stuff Sunday morning, right? I'm more nervous than trying to take responses on a Sunday morning. You don't know what they're gonna say. You know what I'm saying?
See it. I can see it.
Oh my goodness! And you got a whole row of people. You're like, oh man. Like, I'm looking around like, man, maybe I can pass this off to somebody real quick. Like, I can try to get out of this thing. But
oh man, I
and the hard part as well is the bombshells. Every now and again, you'll know when you see them walk up. You're like, oh man, okay. Let me prepare how I'm gonna hold this mic so they can't get to it.
Or better yet, because remember, see, now the cards say, there's more boxes on the card. Yeah. So you can kind of write more like, asking for prayer, to be baptized, restored. But I remember, if I remember right, there was only like a couple boxes on the card.
It was
and it was just like your name and your address, and that was it, really. And that was it. And then the thing is, even though I never did it, I kind of knew that when something, to your point, you knew when somebody had something on their heart to say, because somebody would hand them the card and they was like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna stand on this one. And I was like, wait, they're not even writing down on the card. I was like, oh no. Because it's funny how things have, again, like when we talk about evolution of worship, how things have changed so much. Because remember back then, I don't know about you guys, but when somebody would write on the card and write it up, and they would actually, they would just they would sit down, right? And then remember the person would go to them with the mic, and because everybody was so used to standing up, and then usually there'd be that one person every now and then that would just be like, no, just read off the card.
What I wrote.
Yeah. And again, I don't know about you guys. I'm just gonna be like real for a minute. A lot of times I would say that the human side of me, then when that happened, I would say like, man, like just talk. Like, why didn't, like, you supposed to be talking? Everybody talks. Like, I thought like, it was not necessarily a bad thing, but it was just more so like, maybe a little judgy on my part where I shouldn't have been judging them, because it's funny how, again, we talk about evolution. Now, if somebody wants to talk, I'm like, no. It's like the complete opposite.
Write the card.
Take the card. Now I'm gonna take the card. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? You ever find that kind of strange, right? It's like weird how, I don't know about you, but my mind has even changed, or like it's evolved to what it is now, and where I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. But again, to me, it talks about, you being able to be open-minded to all things and not necessarily closed-minded to a lot of things. But what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah. Like there's always the fine line too, because like we all get it. We understand. We care about one another at church. You know what I'm saying? So it's never like a situation where we're like trying to like poke fun at someone or make fun of their situation. Like, nah, never. Like, we care about everybody at church, right? Like Josh's point earlier, like it's a family feel there, but there are sometimes where you're just like, man, like, just say you need prayer and we'll pray for you. Like, we'll know the specific details. Like, God bless you. Like, thank you for sharing. But because the hardest part is that, we want to hear what's going on in people's lives, so that way we feel more connected to them. But at the same time too, we just don't ever want to be like a distraction where people's minds wander, or people start to judge one another, or people's minds start to, you know what I mean, put certain sins as like big sins and little sins because they overshared and they, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think that's actually a really good point though, David.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. I mean, Josh, I don't know, what do you, if you could like elaborate from your thought process on that, because I really like what Dale said about, not being able to, like, a person doesn't have to say their whole life story up there.
Right.
You can read body language. We can read tone of voice. We can read on a card, in terms of, if you ask them for prayer, to your point, it means a lot. Just to even go down there should mean enough, and that to that, you know what I'm saying? And so like, what's your take on that in terms of how should a person who maybe doesn't understand it and feels like, hey, you need to tell us so I know exactly what to pray for, versus, how do you tell that person you don't need to know everything? What do you think, Josh?
No, I think David's right, and it makes a lot of sense, because now when the prayer requests go up, or when people get their card read, it's just picking people for me, where like it's just, okay, I need this person needs prayer, that person, I'm gonna mix them in throughout the week with the prayers I'm already sending up. Whereas back in the day, it was like, oh man, like they really need it, I'm gonna make sure they're the one I pray, and sometimes it can become like a show. And so it's a lot better now, I think, this way, because like David said, there's no judgment, there's no, okay, let me see who really needs it, versus they don't really need prayer, they just always want to come up here and talk.
Exactly. No, I think, that makes, to me, that, like you said, that just makes all the sense in the world. I mean, you put it perfectly, man. Like you said, it's just like a no judgment zone, and it's really about you and God. We're all obviously just trying to help each other, and we want to be able to send up extra prayers to be able to help whoever. But to your point, I mean, we've all been up there at some point to ask for prayer, and I know there's been times when hey, you know what, this is some things that I'm going through, but also too, there's been times where it's like, hey, I just need prayer. And, like, even those times, and to your point, I think the congregation as a whole, and certain locations that I've been to that have gone to this route or evolved to this part of worship as well, you can tell the evolution of the people who actually are in those congregations, because you see that it's not about, to your point, Josh, it's not about the show anymore. and their mind, it's like it's about worship. And as you said, Dale, it's not about putting what did you say? It's not about being a distraction. It's not about being a distraction. Like if somebody needs prayer, simply okay, cool. I'm like when you say your goodbyes on the church ground after church is over, you let them know, hey, I'm gonna pray for you. Everything's good. I'm gonna pray for you. And like to me, that's like even uplifting in itself without even the person knowing. But like we always say, it's hey, that's between you and God. You know what I'm saying? Like that's literally what it comes down to.
Right.
I think if there is like something else that I would laugh about only right now, and you can't laugh about church, but again, this is kind of going back to the card situation and how things have changed so like it really feels like we say evolution, but I really feel like the tables actually flipped with these two things because of the mindset we had when we were little to where it is today. And one of the things we talked about early on when we first started this whole podcast tonight was we talked about going to Six Flags. And I know you guys are probably like, where's Bryan going with this? But
going to Six Flags.
When we go to Six Flags though, and Infusion had a concert and everybody, we're doing their thing. And then, but when we have worship, remember everybody was so used to just cracking crackers and actually getting juice. Six Flags, hey, Magic Mountain was the first time I started seeing the little cups. And then I remember I was like, what is this? And I remember looking at every 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, all the youth was looking at every time we looked and got that little cracker, that styrofoam thing, everybody looked around like, oh, this ain't the same. And it's crazy how like God humbled us all. And now that's all anybody knows. It's so crazy to me how certain things like that happen, where I think, again, it's just about being open-minded to so many things that will end up changing us. Because for 20 years, now I think about it, everybody's hands was on that cracker. And, by the time it would get to me, there was nothing left.
There was a time I was doing passing out the baskets when we passed them out. And someone spilled the whole crackers on their dress. I'm not going to say no names, but they spilled and they
wait, Dale, you haven't looked up the tray. No, you've been laughing the whole time because you.
They put the tray and they with their hand brushed it back into the.
Oh no!
And I didn't know what to do, so I just kept passing them out. Because what else do you do in the middle of communion?
Now, brothers, this is why we pray before we pass out the bread and the cup. Lord, please bless this bread. We thank you.
But I have to think about that. Like you're right. That's exactly why we pray. Because man, I mean, there be a couple people and the bread wouldn't break the way they needed it to. So then they get a big piece and this is literally where somebody would get a big piece and they look to the left and they look to the right and they just be like, whatever. And they just get the biggest piece. And I'm like, oh no, I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you get the juice. And I remember little kids, because I was one of them little kids, and before I was baptized, I would reach my hand over there to try to grab some juice, and my mom slapped my hand and it hit the little tray, and the juice comes shaking, and then the next person, all they do is just juice all over the top of the tray.
CDC would have had a field day with us.
Oh yeah, we definitely would be out of compliance. Yeah.
What'd you say? Oh, you said CDC?
CDC?
Yeah, they would have had a field day.
Those days, like, but oh man, like you said, it's funny how things obviously have changed and evolved over time. And like you said, in worship, I mean, I really feel like, we've hit a lot of stuff on the head in terms of kind of where it has and, where it's going, I guess. I mean, Dale or Josh, I mean, what do you guys see for the future? All of us have kids. All of us obviously have kids who, we pray to God that will get a chance to live a long life on this earth. So where do you see the church, or what do you see the church evolving to? We got TVs now in every single congregation. We have, screens to be able to see the words. And we have so many different other, things. Like I said, we were talking about laughing last Sunday, Dale. I haven't seen a reader down in front for a preacher. And you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, and so like, what do you see? What is that next thing that you think is going to happen maybe in the next 5 to 10 years that can be added to service without taking away from worship. Go.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything down the line like that, but I had something that I saw that I really enjoyed that it happened for us was when was it the last time Ryan preached? I believe it was the last time when he had the QR code that took you right to his lesson plan that brought all the notes and the slides up on your phone. I thought that was really cool. And that's something I couldn't even imagine 10, 15 years ago.
Oh man, my hand was hurt. My hand was hurting back in the day because that's how my mom made me stay up in church.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I used to take notes. I was writing down every book, chapter, and verse, and then to go home and study those things. And even now, I had to do for my son was younger. When he was falling asleep, I would just pull out a piece of paper and some pen, and I say, "Follow along." And any scripture you hear comes out of his mouth, write it down. And so, like, man, you're right. Like having the QR code was, dude, that's a good one.
It was really cool. I thought that was really cool because not only could you follow along during the sermon, but at home later on, you could go see all the slides. This is the point he made that I really wanted to highlight. And sometimes, you might be writing it down or you might be taking a picture of it and they'll go by a slide quick. And it's like, dang, I only got half of that one. You know what I mean? So that was really cool for me to see.
No, that makes sense. That's a good one. What you got, David?
You know what I'm going to say. I told you I was going to start off with the easy one, and then we're going to switch. Yeah, that's right. You know what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you right now, in the next 5 years, 10 years, I got a funny feeling this tie rule is going to go away. All right. What? You're going to find me at church.
No tie?
T-shirt. All right. Working around the Lord's table. No, I'm kidding.
You going to wear Hawaii? You bring what we bring in them vacation button-ups over there with some rainbow sandals?
Yeah. We're finna have a Hawaiian themed Sunday.
Oh my dude! Like I said, don't tell that to Josh. Josh, like, I just bought 3 new suits. Don't be telling him when we getting rid of ties. and they all 3-piece. Right. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I don't know. I think to me, if I had to think of something, I mean, so like David, you feel that ties are gonna go away? Are you serious about that?
No, I'm teasing. That's always one that I tease everybody about. I really don't have a problem with how people dress at church. It don't make me no difference. I'm gonna wear what I want to wear to church, and it is what it is. If I want to wear a shirt and tie, I wear a shirt and tie. If I want to wear a polo shirt, I wear a polo shirt and have a seat in the back row. I don't care. It is what it is. But now, has anybody ever seen me wear a polo shirt at church? No. So that tells you right there, right? What I want. But I think the biggest thing, man, is just kind of this vein that everything is moving towards, like, just churches and congregations are going to start to see more and more growth on social media platforms and live streaming worship services. I think that's going to kind of be like this weird transition over the next 5 to 10 years where that stuff's just going to kind of skyrocket and take off.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, you're going to have your members that come to the building every Sunday because that's what they love to do. And then there are going to be some members who just want to worship from the comfort of their own home because that's what they love to do. Right. Sure. And I just kind of think that more and more over the next 5 to 10 years, that's just going to become more prevalent. Not just at our church. I just think it in churches in general.
Right. I agree. Do you
definitely see that happening?
To your point, actually, on that, and obviously we kind of wrap it up on this one, but like, do you feel that, how we're all sports gentlemen, we watch a lot of sports, and you guys know what the NBA has been doing a lot, and also other sports lately with that. What am I trying to call? What are they called?
VR.
VRs. Could you ever see VR becoming a thing in church congregations to where, yes, now we watch it on YouTube, but obviously it's on a TV and you can only see what the camera shows you. However, in a VR, it's, just like they do it, like if you're sitting courtside, you can be able to turn and see the person next to you and see who's there, like in service and whatnot. Could you ever, I mean, I'm going a little bit way far, a little bit potentially, but could you ever see something like that because somebody wants a more quote unquote realistic view of church?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Just because people now, especially like post-pandemic, people now just like the comfort of what they're comfortable with. You know what I mean? It might not be sitting next to somebody like this in a pew no more, but they still want to have that same, you know, scene, all the optics, right? The feel, if you will. But yeah, man, like there's definitely going to be a market for that, and I think that it's probably gonna happen sometime in our lifetime. I don't think it's gonna happen like the next 5 years, Bryan, but I think definitely sometime in our lifetime we will see that. Yeah.
Man, could you imagine Josh sitting there and then all of a sudden a camera just turned his head and look at you?
Yeah.
Never mind. That's just Josh's mom. That's just she just
Man,
out
right?
at home today. Okay, never mind. How
Yeah.
you doing? How you doing?
Yeah.
Josh,
But
turn to the left. I'm trying to see what that sister's wearing. Hang on.
right. Josh, tell Malachi to sit up straight. Sit up straight. Right? Man, dude. I mean, it's just wild, but I think, you know, again, with, you know, like I said, this whole thing about bridging the gap, I think part of, you know, bridging the gap, it starts with being able to evolve, you know, as a Christian in general. You know, again, I think, again, Jesus was one that was able to evolve and, you know, evolve himself to be able, again, to just be able to do anything, you know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, I talked to my cousin a lot about these types of things. And it was funny, him and I, somehow we just got on that conversation. And I think, you know, people who are chameleons, congregations who are able to adapt to change, congregations who are able to adapt to different people. I really feel that that's kind of the evolution of where worship can go. To your point, David, that's how you continue to grow the numbers. And I feel like, you know, where we're at, we're obviously excited for that. I'm happy for us getting this platform to be able to do something like that for others to be able to see. But you know, for me, you know, evolution is there. It's gonna stay. You know, in terms of worship, we don't we ain't talking about primates and anything else right now. But we talking evolution of worship. But you know, overall, like I said, I think you know, this episode was a good one, man. Like I said, I think this was a pretty good second episode to talk about, and hopefully, you know, people out there that listen, they got a chance to hear something that, you know, they can relate to. You guys got any final words?
Yeah, Josh, what do we got for episode 3 coming up?
Man, do we have? We're gonna do teasers at the end of.
Yeah, Josh.
I mean,
we can do what they want, Josh.
We could do teasers, man. I mean, you could throw out a couple ideas that we obviously might be talking about, because obviously we have many topics to talk about. Today was obviously more about faith and spirituality, in terms of talking about our faith and how it's grown, and obviously talking about spiritual things. But I mean, Josh, what do you think? Where are we going?
We have a lot. We can continue down this path if we wanted to, because I think there's still a lot of meat left on the bone. But we also, you know, we want to get into spiritual mentorship as well.
That's a good one.
You know,
we all were mentored, and now we're getting a chance to. We're gonna be some mentee. We're gonna
because as you were talking about bridging the gap, I was thinking, like, we have to always remember too that, you know, the bridge changes. So you know, we're one side of the bridge right now, and we're bridging to the older folks, but it's going to change to younger generation. We're going to be on the other side of it at some point.
Yep.
You know, we're going to have to be bridging that gap between the Daniellas, the Malachis, the Jadens of the world, the DJs, you know, and figuring out where they want church to go and what's coming up next for them.
Exactly.
So it just always changes, and you got to be mindful of it.
Dale, last word, man. Last word.
Yes, totally agree. Remember, at the end of the day, 5 acts of worship are never going to change, but the things that kind of take place within the worship service or whatever that make things a little more streamlined, that make things a little less distracting. You know, I think it is to the bigger point that Bryan, Josh, everybody's hitting on tonight, and that's the idea of always trying to meet people where they're at to try to provide the best worship experience possible. So I don't ever see us stopping that particular movement as it pertains to just really trying to connect with people, meet them where they're at, and try to make the best worship service possible. So that's what I got.
That's it. Sounds like a plan to me. Well, I think it's about that time. And like I said, episode 2 is then and done. We'll catch everybody on episode 3.
See you guys later.
All right. See you next week.